Yeah, we see. I gotta get back over there. Amen. You sound
Please rise for the invocation by Reverend Bob Thompson, pastor, Corinth Reformed Church.
Let us pray. Oh God, our Creator, you are perfect and just and good, and we come to you not because we are, but because we depend on you and ask your grace and wisdom in full measure for all the words that are spoken and the thoughts in this room this evening. We pray your grace, and we come to you with a deep sense of gratitude for all your goodness to us. Amen.
Amen.
I would like to mention that we have scouts from Corinth Church.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
And,
No cheering.
and I see some familiar faces. I'm not going to start calling names, Will, but I see familiar faces. But I'm going to ask the leaders if the scouts would be willing to lead the pledge.
You need them down front?
Yeah, come on down.
And 231 is here also.
Yeah, bring them down.
I want to tell you, this is Mr.
231.
Murray's idea, and it's a wonderful idea. See, that wheel pitch is getting big, isn't it?
Everybody's taller than you.
Okay, will y'all get it started, please?
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. I can't ask you to think about it.
Mr. Nelson, if I did. I just told him I'd pass it on to you.
Well, we're going to enter all of the troop members' names in the minutes, okay? So you can check online, by what date? When's the draft of the minutes on the internet?
Friday.
Check on Friday afternoon.
A week from this time.
And if your name's misspelled, you call me. Let me know, because we can fix it. And to let you out. You got to make sure you call me. Okay. Special presentation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Gissy, from our Business Development Committee. It's calling Mr. Gissy, and he's going to make a presentation from the Business Development Commission.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Berry, Mr. Crone, on behalf of the Business Development Committee, what we would like to do is make the first presentation of what is known as the Business Well-Crafted Award. For everyone that's here, and I'll turn around, I've got a big mouth, so I think I'll be okay without the microphone. We want to give you a little bit of history on how this has evolved so that you'll understand what's taking place. But this is what we hope to be an award that will be presented on a monthly basis to a deserving company in the Hickory community. Now, we are the Business Development Committee, which was established by City Council about 3 years ago. Our purpose is to try to support the growth and continuation of business in the Hickory community. The largest project that we've had to date has been the branding of the Hickory area so that we can market ourselves to the world. The research that was done with that proved on both a local, state, national, and even worldwide basis that when people hear the name Hickory and they know anything of it, they think of quality and they think of craftsmanship. So there is how we became Hickory Life Well Crafted is the brand that we're using to market Hickory to the world. As an extension of that, we said we would not be who we are, a community that is recognized for craftsmanship and quality, if it wasn't for the businesses that we've had and the people that have worked there over the years. And there's no better way that we can do something. It's a small token, but it's an honor to those companies that have existed for 75 years or more. Now, I'll apologize in advance because we've probably overlooked companies that are out there. So we would ask that if you're part of, or if you know of a company that's been in the Hickory area for more than 75 years, try to let Mandy know, one of the people on our committee, city council person, someone, so that we can get them on the list. Now, we have, through research, gathered names of companies. We have them in no specific order as to how we're making the presentations. But tonight, our first recipient will be Hickory Chair. And so now, I would like to ask if council and Mr. Mayor would join us up here for the presentation. Them all gathered around you. Our first recipient is Hickory Chair. Mr. Reardon is here today to accept that on their behalf. Very briefly, let me tell you a little bit about them. They were founded in 1911. That's over 100 years ago, and I think they started manufacturing one dining chair, it says.
That's correct.
Okay, and have expanded now to be over 500 employees. They're known worldwide for the very thing that our entire community is, and that's quality and craftsmanship. I think we're very fortunate and couldn't be luckier to have this company to be our first recipient, because they epitomize everything that we hope that the world knows about Hickory. On behalf of City Council, all the people of Hickory, to you, Mr. Reardon, and to the artisans of Hickory Chair, past and present, we would like to present to you the first Business Well Crafted Award from the City of Hickory.
Council members, I want to thank Mr. Crone. I want to thank y'all on behalf of all of our employees. We're actually up to 576. Wow. 86 people added last year. We've got 40 more openings, so if you know of a friend, we can use them. But I really just want to make this brief, but tell you, the last time I was here in front of the council, I was had my hand out. I was asking for support because our company was in jeopardy of being closed and relocated, losing over 500 jobs at the time. And the city and the county came together to support our employees, and since that time, we've pulled together as a family and really have worked to earn the right to be a member of the Hickory community. And our employees are so excited about the life and the pleasure that we have as being part of Hickory. It's a wonderful place, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys have recognized us. But they really are excited about the fact that they're able to take a vocation of hand craftsmanship and provide it across the world, where before we were worried about losing our jobs, now we're actually exporting across the world because people value the craftsmanship that's made here in Hickory. So thank y'all very much. I appreciate
it. I'm going to set up the photo op here, Dave. You want to get there? And maybe, yeah, that's fine. Just
get everybody.
Get everybody in there. Scooch in there and act like shorties.
Oh, yeah.
Stand up, Jim.
Say one more. I am standing.
I'm hurting my neck.
All right. Okay, right? Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, that was really good.
That's good.
I remember it.
Just to point out, Ms. Fitz is too shy to come to the podium. You can imagine that. One of the things that we're doing is with the Business Development Commission's program is we're recognizing these companies on the city's outward-looking webpage, which is hickorywellcrafted.com, that we use to promote our area. And what you see there is the story that the city actually worked with to have written about Hickory Chair and their history and their great success. So we're putting that out to the world as well to say, look at these great companies we have here in the area.
Thank you all. I'd like to make a motion that we allow people who would like to speak about specific agenda items to allow them to do so at this time, subject to our normal rules of the court.
Second.
A motion by Wright, second by Mr. Guest. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. It's unanimous. All members are present. There also, of course, is general comment time at the end of the meeting, which would occur after any discussion is held. So if you want to speak now, you can, or you can speak at the end, or neither, or both. No one is desiring to speak, so I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes of January the 2nd.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. Motion by Patton, second by Seaver. Motion to reaffirm and ratify on second readings.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Fox, second by Patton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I would ask council to remove item E from the consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item E.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Meisner, second by Mr. Seaver. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. E, you want to discuss it, or Mr. Moore?
Yeah, we need to make a little change in the dollar amounts on this grant application, so let me just briefly explain that the city is actually a pass-through entity for both the Hickory Downtown Preservation Association's Historic Preservation Fund, that's a mouthful, which is a long way to say that there's a grant application that the community theater is seeking from the state of North Carolina. And the city of Hickory needs to be the pass-through entity both for the application of those funds, and then if the grants are awarded, they would pass through the city of Hickory to the grant recipients. The change that I need to make is in the actual amounts. The information was originally sent to the city based on some estimates. After the agenda went out, those estimates got clarified, let me say, with some actual bid information. And so the project cost itself, that number needs to change from $23,486 to $48,663. The project entails the replacement of the main entrance doors of the Hickory Community Theater, as well as repointing of the bricks on the building exterior. And as I mentioned in the title, this is a historic grant application, so it is about maintaining the historical integrity of that building. And of course, that building was originally Hickory City Hall. The grant request changes slightly from $14,092 to $15,000, and then the additional $33,663 would be matching funds from the community theater's ongoing campaign to raise money to update the facility. So some technical things, but in order to meet all the deadlines, we wanted to make sure we had that correct for council this evening. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I would move approval item E.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lael, second by Mrs. Fox. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion is unanimous. Well, I guess we're to the public hearing.
Yes, sir.
There's substantial changes to the sign ordinances. I'm not well versed on it. I've offered no input. But I'm going to ask for recusal because of potential financial conflict. And so I'm going to ask for recusal and ask if somebody will make a motion that I be recused.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Meisner, second by Ms. Patton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. Y'all, somebody come get Mr. Guest?
Mayor proceeding.
Okay, Mr. Berry, public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Guest. I'm going to call on the city's planning director, Mr. Brian Fraser, to come to the podium, and Mr. Fraser will present these amendments to the city's land development code prior to council opening the public hearing. Mr. Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Berry, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Mr. Berry, Mr. Trump, good evening. There are some changes to the land development code as promised when Hickory by Choice 2030 and the land development code were adopted just shy of 2 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun. Staff and the planning commission promised to the council that we would conduct annual revisions and updates, and this is our second annual revision and update. There are no recommended by planning commission or staff any recommended changes to Hickory by Choice. We will soon have, probably next year or so, have to update some demographic information, but there's nothing worthy in Hickory by Choice to update at this time. Everything seems to be working fine, but there are some proposed text amendments that staff is recommending and that were approved unanimously by the Hickory Regional Planning Commission back on December the 5th of 2012. So I'm going to go through some of these text amendments here. These are basically, we're looking at, again, this is our second annual revision. This, the proposed changes affects 5 articles in the LDC, the city's land development code, and I would say that they're relatively minor in scope. But those are the articles right there in the sections that we're going to be discussing briefly this evening. First is in Article 2, Section 2.5, has to deal with certificates of appropriateness. Basically, Section 2.5.14 is recommended to be modified to clearly state a certificate of appropriateness expires, this is again, Historic Preservation Commission, expires 1 year from its date of issuance. What we're trying to do is, in this recommended section of the ordinance, is to better align the certificate of appropriateness timeframes with those of the zoning compliance permit being a total of 1 year instead of 2. This is just basically a minor housekeeping item, but does warrant council's attention. The next is Article 6, Section 6.2 of the use regulations, and subsection 6.2.9. We're recommending this be modified by deleting item H, which dictates a specified amount of space per resident in a group living facility. Such requirements, we believe, as the Planning Commission back in December, are better suited for regulation by state building code and state fire code rather than through local land use regulations through city planning, development services staff, as well as the Planning Commission. Again, this is somewhat of a housekeeping item to be a little bit more clear. This would be, again, it's easily to be reviewed and rectified by state statute instead of local ordinance. In Article 7, Section 7.1, residential district standards, we're recommending that these be modified by reducing the required rear setback in the LDR, low density residential R1 district, to 25 feet. Over the past year, planning staff has observed several instances where the enforcement of the 40-foot rear setbacks has been out of character with the historic development pattern of the neighborhood, and has the potential to create some inconsistencies when enforced. If there's an infill lot, or there happens to be a tear down, which we don't see a lot in Hickory, but there's a lot of others around the country, if you're going with a 40-foot setback, you're going to end up looking at the side or the back end of somebody's house instead of being relatively uniformly aligned the street and the historic or traditional land use development pattern of some of those former subdivisions and developments in the city. So we think, again, this is a minor point, but we think this is more aesthetically pleasing. And we've had some issues where people end up building a house and they're looking at their neighbor's back door. instead of the side. Next item is Article 9, Section 9.7. This is for solid waste storage area screening. Basically, we're recommending that this section of the Land Development Code be modified to allow for a wider variety of material types in the construction of the solid waste containers, otherwise known as the dumpster enclosures. Right now, we say they all have to be masonry, and depending on the size, some of these things are running in excess of $10,000 to $12,000 to construct a dumpster enclosure. And in this type of economy, that might be perceived as a little bit of overkill. So over the course of time, we've noticed that the use of other materials, such as wooden and metal fencing, provides the same effect as masonry, but a lot less, a substantial cost savings. This gives the site designers of the development an added incentive to design a site and a manner to locate such dumpsters to the rear of the buildings, but also offers, an option other than masonry. The concrete pad would still remain because, just asphalt or dirt would sink under the weight of the solid waste trucks. If you want to take a look in your travels at a brand new dumpster enclosure that's made out of something different than straight masonry, would be the new Dunkin' Donuts on 127 North in Viewmont. That's a rather nice dumpster enclosure. It's still expensive, but it wasn't astronomical in cost, and I think it fits the purpose and spirit of our ordinance. Okay, as the mayor said, we're going to talk a little bit about signs, and there's really, I think, some more verbiage in here than what's needed, but we do need to explain these items, although they are interrelated. Subsection 10.5A1 of the sign section in Article 10 of the LDC is recommended to be modified to increase the permissible sign area for wall signs in non-residential districts from 1 foot of sign area per linear foot of primary wall length to 2 feet of sign area for each linear foot of primary wall area, with a maximum area of 300 feet. We think this is business friendly. It's keeping better in touch with industry standards, and these signs are all professionally done. We think that depending on some of the topographical issues that we have in Hickory, and more important, some of the older developments, whether they've been revitalized or not. Think of the old Kmart shopping center where Ross Dress for Less is and Ashley Furniture. Those signs under our current code from Highway 70, I don't want to say they look like postage stamps, but it's close. Something that you'll see more in keeping with what we're proposing, and when Mr. Overby dug through a lot of old records and an old PD, a planned development in the Valley Crossing shopping center, was the new signage you see at the brand new Academy Sporting Goods store. That's basically 2 for 1. I think it looks very tasteful. It does not look like a billboard. And what we're really hoping for, and we've talked to fellow planners about this, is that let the professionals handle the signage. And we think if there's slightly bigger signage, again, in those non-residential areas of the city, that and combined with stricter code enforcement will keep out some of these homemade cardboard signs and what we call the snipe signs, the vinyl coated cardboard signs with the 2 little posts that you stick in the ground, and the 8, 10, 12, 20 foot flag mounted signs that we've been, Mr. Myrick's been doing a great job of enforcing over the past several weeks. And let the folks go with the larger wall signs. We think this is in keeping with the spirit of the ordinance and really looks nice. Take a look at Academy Sports. I don't think that's overscaled at all. Subsection 10.51A2 is recommended to be added to provide increased wall signage for buildings of larger scale primary wall lengths in excess of 150 linear feet. Again, those are for bigger box stores, and buildings meeting of this standard would be permitted wall signage equal to 15% of the total area of the primary wall with no set maximum. Again, a little bit business friendly, not overkill. Subsection 10.5.1.1A3 recommended to be modified to indicate that additional signage on secondary building walls is permitted if such walls are located adjacent to vehicular drive aisles with shopping centers. But our current code basically says if you're on an intersection, you're on a corner, you can have a sign on each city street. But we have a lot of streets that aren't streets. They're driveways into campuses, they're driveways into colleges, high schools, shopping malls, strip centers, and the like. So this would allow some additional signage, but I think it would be done tastefully, and it still, I don't think, would be overkill. Section 10.51A4 is recommended to be added to the code to clearly indicate the maximum number of signs permitted on building walls. That's a little bit up to argument right now, how many signs they can have. It's up to interpretation by planning staff, which comes down to me, do we allow 2 signs, do we allow 3 versus the square footage? So this sets in terms to make it stick. Section 10.52, again, recommended to be modified to increase the permissible sign area for freestanding monument signs not attached to the wall. Again, only in the general business C2, the regional commercial C3, and the industrial IND districts. These are areas where we have standard, less restrictive, non-residential. It's not NC, it's not CC1 or CC2 where there's higher design standards. And these, again, will go from 1 foot of sign area per linear foot of primary wall length to 2 with a maximum area of 300 square feet. Again, think of something like Academy Sports or some of these strip centers that the signage is well off the road, where it may be a little bit more difficult to see. And again, section 10.5.2 is recommended to be modified to clearly state 1 freestanding sign is permitted along each street frontage. Again, on a corner, you could have 2. The code isn't currently real clear about that. It talks about the number of buildings and the like. So we're trying to clean this area up. Are we being a little bit more liberal with a small L in terms of allowing increased signage? Yes, but we think it's going to be tasteful. I think it's going to resurrect some of the bad old fading signage that we've got now. We think it'll help businesses. It's not going to significantly detract from any neighborhoods with the zoning districts that we've got in, because it is going to be strictly limited. The lighting is still going to be the same, interior illumination. We've talked to the business community. I've talked to some members of the chamber, and they're certainly well for it. Even though we modified our code 2 years ago, we really haven't had a lot of problems. We brought more substantive changes to y'all last year. So this I'm looking at is relatively minor, and the only sticking point we ever get is with signage. So we need to modernize our code slightly, upgrade the signs. And we think this is going to, the professionally done signs will help to eliminate some of these fly-by-night signs that you see all over our roadways and take a lot of staffing manpower to remove. I mean, just this past quarter, we pulled, I think, close to 400 signs. It just takes a lot of staff time, and we think with the more professional signs, that'll help to some extent eliminate that problem. And I'd be more than happy to address any questions. Yes, sir?
I have a question. We talked about a sign on the side of the building. So, a mounted sign, or could they actually paint a sign on the
You're not allowed to paint a sign. It's got to be mounted. It cannot project above the roof line, and I can't project off the building wall any more than 24 inches. And it would have to get, meet the wind load for weight. It would have to be approved not only by my office, my planning staff, it would have to be approved by the county for the way it's attached to the building, and get an electrical permit for the lighting of the sign.
That's the question. What do other cities do, or is it a problem with trucks on out parcels being used as signs?
We are looking into that. We've had a lot of problems with, I think, with the down economy. People are trying to advertise more and more. You look at it, and it's somewhat of a fine line. IFH, we use them as a guinea pig. They've got a huge truck lot. They're moving in and out all the time. Is that a sign? No. There's a sign on the corner and the location in front of somebody's business. Are they using that as a sign? Maybe. But if it's moving around and they just use that, we'll use the firehouse as an example. That sign is, that truck is used for catering purposes. It does move around. What we're trying to enforce, do a better job of enforcement, again, with, basically less than one person full-time doing the enforcement of the land development code, are those trucks that never move, that aren't tagged. We've got a few of those that we're dealing with right now that are under zoning enforcement action, or that are located off-premise, and they're paying somebody else $100 a month to park them in their parking spot. So we are dealing with those now. Some cities are more liberal with it. Some cities come down really hard. I know communities like Cornelius and Huntersville, some of their fines are as much as $400 a day without a warning. Technically, under our regulations, a sign has to be an attached structure. I don't consider a truck or a trailer an attached structure, but we are trying to work some compromises with different business owners to say, listen, you can't hang a banner off your truck and call it, it's not really a truck. It's not being used for motoring purposes. It's not tagged. It needs to be tagged. Has it moved off the lot? You show me a record of when this thing was moved off the lot. And we have about 3 or 4 of those in the city that are problematic. Other ones like Firehouse Subs, Babcock Furniture, they're parked in front of their business, and they do move occasionally.
Let me ask you another question. Has anybody said anything about and I went by there pretty fast, I didn't see on like 2nd Avenue Southwest, kind of near between Bonita and like 11th. I thought I saw a tractor-trailer truck that was a sign. I mean, that's
I spoke to
bigger
their
than
attorney
billboards.
2 weeks ago, again today, and I'm meeting with that business owner next Tuesday.
It's bigger than a billboard.
It's bigger than a billboard. He had one other truck out there, a smaller panel truck, that wasn't tagged, that we made him move. He had Santa on top of it and thought, we were going to get into the Lenore Santa fight. And I said, no, you can put Santa wherever you want, but you need to show me some records that that truck is being used as a trailer and not as a sign. So he's coming in Tuesday to presumably bring me some records so we can review. I mean, he's been more than cooperative, so I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Thank you.
We did get some citizen complaints on that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question with regards to the increase of sign area for the freestanding signs.
Mm-hmm.
Those areas right now are limited to 25 foot in height. Is that
We're
correct?
not looking at height, we're looking at square footage.
I understand that. My concern is that you increase the square footage without increasing the height. You can end up potentially with some signs that seem out of scale within themselves, large and low.
Right, I see
Poor
what you mean.
visibility.
Yeah, potential poor visibility. I mean, I think I'm not. Yeah, I would. It might be something that staff and the planning commission will look at. I don't know without running the numbers, but if you're limited to 25 feet and you can get a 300-foot sign, a 10 by 30 sign is 300 feet.
Well, that's something I think we'll have to take a look at. And again, we can either, number one, it's got to be out of the right of way. They can't place it in the state or city right of way. It's got to be, at least 10 foot back. And then we're looking at where it can't interfere with the site distance. It's got to stay out of that 10 by 70 site triangle. And, we see 1 or 2 of these signs, and it is a problem, and I fully understand what you're saying. We may have to come back and modify that section of the code before the annual review is up.
Yeah, for the height, yes. Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so before we get started with the public hearing, I'll just give you a few of the outline of the rules. Anyone who's present who would like to speak opposed to this article will have an opportunity to be able to do that. We ask that you speak for no more than 15 minutes. At that time, we'll ask if there's anyone that is in favor of this proposal that would like to speak. They will also be given the opportunity to speak for 15 minutes. At the end of those 2 times, if there's any rebuttal for either side, we'll also give them another opportunity to speak for an additional 15 minutes, and if that's not enough, we'll vote and determine whether or not we'll allow someone to continue to speak after that. If you so desire to speak, we'd ask that you come forward to the podium and state your name and address, and so we can have a record of who you are and where you live. So at this time, I will declare that the public hearing is open and ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak opposed to the amendments to the article of the City Land Development Code. Okay, no one desiring to speak opposed to the article, I'd ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak in favor of the amendment. There being no one desiring to speak, I'd ask if there's a motion from council. We'll close the public hearing and ask if there's anyone on the council that would like to make comments or make a motion to approve.
I move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. All right. Somebody want to let the mayor know he can resume his mayorship?
Absolutely.
Now the mayor's back. His mayorship.
No, that's good.
Did you have a good nap?
I did. Are my side friends gonna be happy or sad tomorrow?
You have to read the paper. Have to read the paper.
That's on 3 sides, that's right. Thank you all. There was just no reasonable way to break it down into components and me stay involved in the 4 issues and recuse on the signs. Unless we got sort of convoluted, so that's the reason that I asked to recuse. Thank you. Let's see. I'll turn my pages back here. Okay, contracts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you all know, we've been in the process over the last several months of putting out the bid and then recognizing the low bidder and entering into an agreement with Catawba County to fund the Hickory-Catawba Wastewater Treatment Plant. So this evening, we have 3 more items that need to be considered by City Council this evening. And I'll ask the city's Public Services Director, Mr. Chuck Hansen, to come to the podium and present items A and B, which is the approval of a contract with Jimmy R. Lynch, who is the low bidder, and approval of engineering construction services with Davis and Floyd. And then after that, I'll ask Mr. Wood to come forward and present the financing. Thank you, David, on that. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Greer. I apologize. I did not see you sitting back there. So Kevin Greer, the Assistant Public Services Director.
Mayor Wright, members of council, Mr. Berry, Mr. Crone. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak yet again on our Hickory-Catawba Wastewater Treatment Plant project. I'm not Mr. Hanson or Mr. Wood, but I'll do my best.
It won't be hard.
I didn't say that. The existing facility that the city of Hickory bought back in 2003 has been in operations, as it sets now, has been in operations since 1956. That was the last known upgrade, so we are approaching, of course, a 60-year life on this facility. It is a 225,000 gallon a day facility, so of course it's in need of upgrade down there to account for growth. The city of Hickory and Catawba County, again, Hickory bought the facility in 2003, and between 2003 and 2006, Hickory and Catawba County started looking at the area and deciding what needed to happen. So in 2006, City Council and Catawba County agreed to a contract saying that we would proportionally fund an upgrade of that facility, and that proportion, of course, being equal to capacity rights, and that being 50% each for Hickory owning the facility and Catawba County having the right to send flow there. Construction of this magnitude is anticipated to be 18 to 24 months, so we're looking at 1.5 years, 2 years, depending on how construction goes. And it does need to be upgraded prior to any kind of economic development happening, so it's best to get it now before growth actually starts kicking in down there. And the city of Hickory will own the facility and will be the contracting agent for all the contracts that we're going to ask council to approve tonight. And on December the 18th, 2012, council did, of course, approve the shared agreement for cost with Hickory and Catawba County. Again, that edified the agreement of 50% proportion of all those expenses. The facility that we're proposing, we've gone through the design, we've looked at that area down there, and the facility that we've settled on is a 1.5 million gallon a day facility. That will allow for growth for a 25-year window is what we're projecting. Again, with the economy the way it is, we hope things take off, and it will. But that 1.5 million gallon a day facility will account for that 25-year life in our projections down there. The first item that we would ask for you to consider is the contract for Jimmy R. Lynch. We received bids for construction. There were 13 bidders that submitted bids for us on September 20th, 2012. We brought that back to council in November. On November 6th, 2012, council accepted the bids. And again, And I think Mr. Lell's the one that pointed out, what we did there was actually say if we move forward, us accepting the bids, Jimmy Lynch is the one that we would move forward with. We've gone through all those bids, and Jimmy R. Lynch and Sons Company did have a successful bid. Everything was in order. So we are, of course, asking council to approve the bid with Jimmy R. Lynch and award that contract with Jimmy R. Lynch and Sons out of Pilot Mountain, North Carolina, in the amount of $10,219,657 for upgrade of the Hickory-Catawba Wastewater Treatment Facility. This one's, it's all three together, so I'm going to look at each one of these individually if council will let me. And it's the first one that I would ask you to consider would be the Jimmy R. Lynch and Sons.
I would move that we approve that contract.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lael, second by Ms. Patton. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. It's unanimous.
Thank you, Mayor Wright. The next one for consideration is the Construction Administration and Inspection Services contract. Davis & Floyd was the successful candidate on this, and we, of course, with engineering services are a little bit different. You can't really bid engineering services. You have to solicit for qualifications, and then you review those qualifications, and you make a determination based on who you feel is the most qualified engineering firm. In working through that, we did prepare a request for qualifications. We sent it out. We got 5 proposals back, and then 4 of those were complete packages. So there were 4 that we considered. We did that in October 2012, so we were doing that. We did our bids, and then of course we were doing construction after that, construction services after that to kind of keep everything moving together in our calendar.
Who requires that you consider qualifications first? I'm just curious.
It's Mini Brooks Act. There's a federal and a state law that requires engineering and surveying services to be considered that way.
That must be much more important than accounting fees and lawyer fees.
So in October 2012, we went through those packages. We narrowed the 4 candidates down to 2. We interviewed those 2, and Davis & Floyd was selected as the most qualified candidate for this project. So once we make that determination, then of course we start negotiating on the fees. The way we negotiated this contract was there is a monthly pay schedule that's in the contract, similar to what we did with the Northeast. And the intent of that is it emulates the construction process. So as things are kind of ramping up for construction with shop drawings and questions and that kind of stuff, you see the pay schedule starts ramping up in the middle of construction when we're doing inspections and design changes and all of those things really hot and heavy, then your pay requests are the highest, and then it starts tailing down on the back end. Similar to our last contract, because it worked really well for us, what we've done in this is the contract goes through the construction period. So as quick as the project is considered complete, then the engineer's contract ends as well. So if we go to 16 months, the engineer's contract ends at 16 months plus 1 for them to do their shop drawings and those kind of things to wrap it up. And that worked really well for us in the Northeast, so we're of course carrying that forward. It also includes all special inspections. This engineer is to provide the special inspections and certify those. That's a building inspection and building code requirement, so that's covered in the contract. Hickory is, of course, the contracting agent because, again, we own the facility, everything's through us. And again, this is one of the items that is split 50-50 between us and Catawba County. For this item, staff is requesting that council approve the contract and award the contract to Davis & Floyd for construction admin services, and again, that's administration and inspections, in the amount of $520,651.
I would move approval of contract with Davis Floyd for engineering services in conjunction with Catawba Wastewater Treatment.
Motion by Mr. Lael, second by Ms. Patton. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous.
The last item that we have for council consideration with the Hickory-Catawba plant is the bank bids. As we go through the process, and of course with the shared cost agreement we have with Catawba County, Hickory will be the note holder for the facility. So we're going to borrow, again, $9.9 million is what we had council approved in the contract, and that's what we received bids on. This is, of course, a payback 50-50 between Catawba County and the city of Hickory. City Council held a public hearing on January 2nd, 2013, agreeing that the installment purchase method was the correct method to use for the project and it was acceptable. From that, we actually solicited bids from banks. We received 2 bids back, one from BB&T and one from PNC Bank on December 31st, 2012. There's a 45-day window that's really tight, so we had to push that all the way to the end of the year to make it work. And of course, what council approved in the public hearing was it is $9.9 million for 15 years is the term of the note. PNC Bank submitted the best proposal back to us on a 15-year payback. The interest rate was 2.27% with level payments. And then in that, actually what happens is we receive all of that money and it goes into an account. So one of the items we really liked on both of those bids was that we get the interest off of that account also as we're going through construction. Now, it's a tight window, 18 to 24 months, you're not going to get a lot of interest, but it is something, of course, that was out there that's a good item for us. Debt service on the project, because we did have both banks provide an amortization schedule, so PNC amortization schedule with level payments is $760,998.64 annually. Of course, that's split between 2 payments, but also it's split between Hickory and Catawba County. So we make a payment every February and every August, and that payment is going to be $380,499.32, and that, again, that's what each one of us will pay annually. It's the $380,499. With this item, staff is requesting that City Council accept the bank bid and then, of course, award the bank bid, the financing agreement with PNC Bank for financing of the Hickory-Catawba Wastewater Plant project, again, with the terms of 2.27% interest and a 15-year note. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I would move approval.
Motion by Ms. Patton.
Second.
Second by Mr. Seaver. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion is carried. The next item has to do with the subcommittee of Hickory City Council, and that was a 3-person committee. Is a 3-person committee, I guess. Recommendations to decide the language for getting citizens' input at the beginning of the meeting. The minutes have been prepared for that meeting, and they are voluminous. They have mistakes in them, which you'd expect, and voluminous minutes prepared in a very short time. They're going to need to be finalized, and I don't know about other council members. I know I have pushed for us to have a vote tonight, but I'm not comfortable voting until I reflect on the approved minutes.
Do we have a recommendation from the subcommittee?
Well, there's going to be a recommendation from the subcommittee, so I guess we let that recommendation come. Now, I have some comments I want to make to clarify some things that happened at that meeting. And I guess I would say, so everyone understands, I was the chairman of the committee just because I think the charter says that I'm presiding over all meetings if I'm there, right? Is that what it says?
I don't think that anyone was specifically appointed for that. It says that the mayor will preside and have all do and preside at,
well,
the mayor presides at all meetings and shall operate the meeting under Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, in any event, I called the meeting to order, and then I think at that point there was really not, quote, a presiding officer. But ultimately, I withdrew from the meeting, which I'm going to go into in a few minutes. And I suggested as I withdrew, and I'm probably out of order to do this, but I suggested that Mrs. Fox was the senior council member and sort of, and she didn't make any complaint or motion that Mrs. Patton had the job. So I presume that Mrs. Fox would be giving any report that the committee would make. But I hope that you all will allow me the indulgence, if you choose to vote, to make my comments before you vote.
Can I ask one question? Now, we're not voting tonight, correct?
here's my take on this, and I don't know exactly, and I apologize for not being able to attend the meeting. I think I told you all to be able to ahead of time, but you've got several documents over a period of time that talk about some issues involved in this matter that I feel like y'all have wanted to clean up. And in particular, back in 1998, there was a policy. Actually, this was probably put into an ordinance talking about people contacting the city manager ahead of time to be placed on the agenda. I mean, that's still basically in our code. And at that time, in 1998, council voted that speakers will be limited to 3 minutes and may not yield time to other people. Council may vote by majority to extend an additional time to a speaker or modify agenda to accommodate a speaker. So you've got that hanging out there, and then you've got the policy that you enacted back in 2005 that talks about council allowing time for public comment at the at regularly scheduled meetings, and it also has that 3-minute time frame in there. But to answer your question, whatever the recommendation is, or whatever council decides they want to see done in the future, in my opinion, ought to be in the form of a motion to direct the city attorney and the deputy staff attorney to draft an ordinance that contains whatever you want to see in there, and to further address cleaning up the other issues with the 3 minutes here and there that you know probably need to be deleted from the policies and from the ordinance as well.
And would this require a public hearing?
It's not a public hearing. We're not changing the charter. We're not, and this is not a land development code amendment. This is an ordinance amendment. It's an amendment to ordinance section 2-55 entitled Agenda, and that outlines the basically the protocol and the order of business that we follow in our agenda meetings.
But we had talked in terms, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, and I'll ask you.
Well, we had talked in terms of a public hearing, but really that was just so that people would, I guess, know that we were considering this, even though I don't know that, I think people who are interested will know about it. But we also wanted to guarantee input. I guess what I'm going to say, do we want to get input tonight? Of course, anybody here is entitled to speak at the end of the meeting by law. So do we just let that be where we go with this, or do we maybe?
My suggestion for council is we hear the recommendation from the committee, and then we enter into discussion of what the next step would be.
Okay.
If that, I mean, that's. Yeah.
Before we do that, I'd like to have some clarification on whether you just mentioned that we didn't have to change our charter, and I'd like to hear some clarification on charter versus policy, because I've heard from different folks different ways.
Well, there's 3 different things you're looking at. You've got the charter, which is difficult to amend. You've got the code, which is the code of ordinances that you can amend either anytime if you've got enough council members that vote, or put it on for another hearing, but it doesn't have to be a public hearing. And then a policy is just a resolution that says we vote that from now on we're going to do so, and so. Now there's a policy right now about public comment. There's a policy, or this may be code, about the 3 minutes for people to call ahead of time. And in my opinion, to clean it up, however it's done, it would be best to enact an amendment to ordinance section 2-55 and make those changes accordingly.
Well, I mean, and what you're saying is all, the ordinance and the policy need to be supportive of each other. Obviously, no inconsistencies, and so what I'm hearing said is it's going to be difficult to do that on just by action tonight. We might direct staff to move in that direction.
Yeah, and for instance, some of the confusion we had before, based on the misstatement in the flyer that we put out there, caused us to get together and go through all this and put in there what's what. And there's just, it is kind of confusing. You know, you can speak here 3 minutes, you can speak there 3 minutes. And I just think for clarification purposes, it's good to get it straightened out.
Well, yeah. So let's hear the recommendation, and that'll maybe give us the framework for discussion on how to instruct them to move forward with ordinance draft, or drafting potential changes to the ordinance.
Okay, Mrs. Clark?
And that is true, that there is a rule that once the recommendation is made and presented to council, it takes 30 days before you rule on it, but it does not have to be a public hearing.
Well, that's part of the recommendation. You have before you the recommendation. Attached is page 1 of an agenda. Items 1, call to order. Item 2, invocation. Item 3, pledge of allegiance, are in the same order on each agenda. The recommendation would be that after item 3, the pledge of allegiance, item 4 would read public comment. The comment time would allow citizens to speak concerning anything on their mind, address concerns on second readings, consent agenda, or any other item on the printed agenda, unless their comments pertain to an advertised public hearing. Citizens would be advised to speak in the time frame allotted for citizen comments on an advertised public hearing. Comments under the public comment time would be limited to 3 minutes unless the entire council voted to allow an additional 3 minutes. We believe that this cleaned up the public comment area of our meetings. It would be noted on the agenda as item 4. There would be no other time during the council meeting for further input other than advertised public hearings. Simple to the point. Mrs. Patton made a very simple amendment to this suggestion, 05066, that pretty much stated that at any time during the meeting, if there was a person who felt like they had information to add to an item that the council might be discussing at that period, that upon council vote, they would be allowed to speak. Periodically, that arises. A couple months ago, we were having a discussion about development or a technical issue, and there was a gentleman in the audience who raised his hand and asked to speak, and on vote of council, we allowed him his comment. So that was the amendment to this suggestion.
Can I ask you this, Ms. Fox, Ms. Patton? Are you talking about you're going to have a time according to your recommendation where you can say pretty much anything you want to address issues that are on the council agenda, and then you're going to still allow people to stand up and say, how's that going to happen? Are they going to stand up and say, I want to speak on item so-and-so?
My recommendation was at the end. My recommendation was at the end of the meeting.
Well, they're entitled by right to speak then. And I was going to suggest that item 6 of the procedures for 2005 be deleted because it allows that very thing. I think they ought to speak at the beginning or at the end.
So are you going to where you have 2 lanes where you can speak?
It would only be at the discretion of council if they could speak at the end also.
I mean, language for something like I see what your suggestion would read something, nothing herein shall preclude council by its own motion from allowing someone to be heard on the matter before the council.
Correct.
I mean, it does not set aside a time, it does not.
No, that last
Nothing,
period
it
is
just says it
gone.
does not.
Correct. The citizen input at the end would disappear unless someone just absolutely had to have something to say, and that would be only under, if council wanted to allow that. Otherwise, that public comment period is moved to item 4.
Yeah. Does, the state statute just requires that we receive public comments, is that not correct? It does not tell us when we are to receive.
That's correct.
That's correct, so.
At least once a month.
Yeah, you don't have to do it at every meeting.
Oh, okay.
I mean, look, you all have bent over backwards to allow people to speak, and I appreciate that. I think the citizens do too. I would just urge that if this is done, it's done in a manner that cleans up these other policies and procedures we have out there, and that all be incorporated in any ordinance amendment that may be presented to council. Now, there's a little conflict, and I want to clarify this, because this number 6 in this policy dated September 2005 says, at the discretion of the majority of council, a speaker may be allowed to speak at other times during the meeting with respect to a specific item on the agenda. Is that what you're saying, Ms. Patton?
No, I was wanting for us to have the latitude for, if there was at the end of the meeting someone wanted to speak, that we had at our discretion to take a vote and allow them to speak again.
What he just read allows that at any point, including me, would it not?
Well, you have matters not on the agenda requires a majority of council to consider. I mean, is that?
It seems to me like that covers it, because it says at any time during the meeting.
Well, those types of comments too would be most appropriate, like particularly if they're technical in nature. Let's say we're talking about, I mean, I don't know.
Wastewater treatment.
Yeah, a wastewater treatment plant, and there's the contractor out there says, no, we're using Wesco pumps,
And
not.
I wish I could remember who that was. It was somebody sitting right over there, and he raised his hand, and we allowed him to add his expertise. That's been a couple
That's well said, the expertise or technical or clarification.
I can't imagine why we would ever not have our discretion to allow someone to speak.
Right, yeah, that's the,
I mean, why would we not want to allow that?
And I just want to make sure we always have that discretion.
Right, yeah.
On top of Mrs. Fox's.
Well, the only thing is, you need, the discretion is fine, but, and I don't know that we'd ever turn anybody down, but you do run the risk that you have, people standing up and just offering one-sentence comments that may or may not be relevant.
Well, and you also, and I like Mr. Wales' comment about the caveat, you also run into the fact that you may have people under the guise of one of these get up and start, spouting personal items against one of the council members, and we should have the right to stop people from talking about certain things.
Well, we have, my recollection is, I don't know, can any council member or the presiding officer make a motion to have somebody declared out of order?
It would be the mayor first, but yes.
Well, no, the mayor or majority of council.
Yes.
Anybody can do
And
that.
that's under the rules of decorum.
So anybody can do that already.
On matters.
Any council member.
So it seems like there's some consensus with regard to, I might be wrong, with regard to receiving public comment, but then having language in the ordinance under that Article 2 agenda.
2-55.
2-55, or policy, which colors in this nuance about someone providing technical expertise or clarifying the matter. It's not intended to pivot back.
That's not my opinion.
Right. No, you're right. Not just, I don't
believe in that.
I don't, you're right. It's yeah.
So I think the consensus of council is that we have public input.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
The maximum possible. The maximum possible.
The semantics is the thing.
I want it to be the maximum possible in the friendliest manner for our citizens. They deserve it.
Getting back to your comment, Mayor, you are correct. The mayor can declare someone out of order or by vote of council, so council can vote.
Yeah, so that requires a motion, right?
That's correct.
So at any time in a meeting, if a council member
You can
thinks,
declare somebody.
I can declare it, I know.
Without a motion.
I know.
Okay.
But any council member at any time can declare someone out of order for taking too much time, for being boisterous, for any reason they want to make a motion.
That's correct.
Right, thank you.
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Now, getting back to Ms. Patton's proposed language, what did you say? Like, one, did you say, like,
I don't know.
What?
Mr. Well did.
Well, I don't know that it's suitable for codifying within ordinance. It certainly is probably suitable for policies council that, that would not, if someone present that provide technical expertise or further provide information needed that they would council appeal. And although, that's it's the kind of thing that it's difficult to write that into rulemaking. It's just, you've got to sort of have, trust the process and the council. And I certainly trust everybody up here that if somebody's got something that's important for the discussion, that's not outside, that particularly is technical in nature, we're going to hear it.
And that's what I wanted to.
Yeah, that's what,
It's always
it's
provided
hard to practice codify that.
Let me ask you one more time, if this is not the magic words that would be added to a potential ordinance to be presented to council. At the discretion of a majority of council, a speaker may be allowed to speak at other times during the meeting with respect to a specific item on the agenda.
Yeah, I think that's fine the way it's written. I mean, who determines who's an expert actually?
Y'all do.
I mean, they didn't bring the credentials with them.
Y'all do.
Sound and speak.
And I think generally in those cases, it would be a matter of the appropriate staff or council or city manager to recognize it. And then, if you want to take a vote, that's fine.
Do you want to narrow that field and it says speak at other times during the meeting? Do you want to say speak at other times during the meeting concerning technical items, or you want to leave it this broad?
I was thinking more towards the end of the meeting was what my thought was, is that if we went through, we had our public hearings and everything went through, and then at the end someone thought, oh my goodness, I had failed to bring something up, they would have that opportunity to bring it up.
So do you want that included in the agenda?
No.
It would be more of a policy
Policy.
thing. Why don't we take a crack at getting the ordinance right, and then we'll work on the policy?
Yeah.
How about that? And we'll do this over the next
And we've got
month or
plenty of
two.
time. I presume that I or anyone else can still make the motion to allow people to speak at the beginning of the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay?
But if we do this,
Certainly
it would
nothing
be
wrong with that.
necessary.
Huh?
If this is adopted, it would be necessary at that point.
Well, that's the idea of some people have, is don't, just adopt it and don't make the motion. But all I'm saying is there's no urgency because we're not really going to change anything we do.
Why did we do this?
Well, I guess you are going to, you also are going to put everybody's presentations at the beginning of the meeting, right?
Yeah, that's what
So
this
you can
recommendation.
accomplish that, and also the 3-minute rule.
Well,
If I want to speak any other time, let it be by other council.
my suggestion on that would be to instruct staff, and I'll make this in the form of a motion, instruct staff to draft amendments to Article 2 that would be consistent with Mrs. Fox's recommendation, with the exception of the time limit. And then let's go back as a policy matter and talk about time limits and about hearing other folks during the meeting. As a matter of policy.
Talk about that tonight or later?
Let's just talk about it.
Well, then I want to make, I'd like to have a chance to, well, I'll just work my comments in when I'm at it, okay? Let's talk about the 3 minutes, is that right?
Is 3 minutes listed right now in
3 minutes is listed right now.
It's a policy matter.
It's a policy and it's an ordinance about, but not only applies to people that are requesting to be heard before the meeting and to have matters put on the agenda by the city.
If they have, if they don't do it. Well, perhaps I would, that's possible, because it sounds like we're gonna try to tackle all this tonight. So, I'm certainly consider that.
Okay,
Can I ask for one point of clarification before you consider this? This, and you may or may not include this language in there, but it said, comments under the public comment time would be limited to 3 minutes unless the entire council voted to allow. Is that a majority of council? By vote of the majority of council?
Majority would be for the additional 3 minutes.
Okay. Didn't mean to interrupt.
With regards to time limits, I have no problem with the time limits that Alderman Fox has suggested. I do think, as a matter of public policy, time limits would be better placed within a council policy and not the ordinance. So, yeah, I'll let my motion stand. We instruct staff to draft an ordinance to change the order of our agenda to accommodate public comment that satisfies the public comment required by the North Carolina General Statutes. That is at item 3, and then I would ask staff, part of this motion would also be to get to everyone the existing policies and formulate some framework for discussion on cleaning up the policy, which is dated 2005.
I am going to express a little reservation, that's not in my remarks here. But we had specifically asked, as in making this, going through this process, we wanted to gather information on what other people were doing. Whether we kept doing what we were doing or changed what we were doing or whatever, we wanted to have some data on what similar cities, and some not so similar, and some close by, were doing. No information has been accumulated on the 3-minute rule. It just came out of nowhere, and no information has been accumulated. There was no basis for a real discussion. It's either, do you like what we're doing now, or want to change it, period. I'm not saying that this committee wasn't, well, I'm going to question whether the committee was entitled to do that.
Well,
But I'm not questioning that the council can do that.
My motion was to ask them to draft an ordinance which will come before us for a vote. Okay? So at which point we will discuss. And then to ask staff to provide a form and framework and information regarding other cities to help us create the best policy.
Could I make a motion now?
No. Not no, because I've got a motion on the floor. Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Lael, second by Mr. Guest. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion carries. I'd like to make a motion that the staff consider getting information on what other people do on the 3-minute rule. And I am going to, if I can, could I start my comments now? I'm not, it's not like I'm just dying to get to it, but we're starting to talk about things that I think my comments are relevant to.
But maybe I point out that what Mrs. Fox and I were both alluding to is that we already have the 3-minute policy. and the staff times it at 3 minutes, they say it, another 3 minutes, another 3 minutes, and at some point, we already have that policy.
I'm going to cover that very thoroughly.
We have that policy, but it has not been being enforced.
Well, I'm
and
going to
that's what
cover
we're
that
looking
very
for.
thoroughly. Okay?
That's what we are looking
A
for.
couple of things I want to point out. Any council member who thinks somebody's out of order, for any reason, can make a motion that they're out of order and ask for a vote on it, okay? So here's what I'd like to say, if you'll bear with me, and I'm mainly doing this because I felt that I needed to withdraw from that committee yesterday. And I really didn't like doing that. And I said, you know, the problem I have is when I'm trying to do things and not explaining to people why I'm doing so, I get in trouble. So here it is. There are too many eyes in this because this is a first-person account, okay, of what I see in this. I want everybody to have a good experience when they come to these meetings, when they meet with city staff or city council. If there's any way to make it better, friendlier, I want to do so. This is only about the 3-minute rule. I've got no problem, as long as we allow citizen input in ample places in our meetings, and with ample time for them to say what they have on their mind. That's not an issue with me. I think we're fine. This is only about the 3-minute rule, which I frankly view as kind of a silly little thing. Okay? But however, I'm explaining why I feel that way, and every council member here can explain why they don't feel that way. I was very embarrassed yesterday. We've had about a 7-year back and forth about a soft 3 minutes or a hard 3-minute rule. Here's the difference. A hard 3-minute rule means you interrupt the speaker in mid-sentence and you say, I want to make, excuse me a minute, let me see if anybody wants to make a motion that you be allowed to continue. That falls on the presiding officer, who may be the person most anxious not to interrupt the speaker. Then we take the vote. There's nothing incidentally in here that says what happens except we extend the time at 3 minutes. It doesn't say you give them another 3 minutes. There's nothing about the 6, 9, or 12. The soft 3 minutes means that at any time after 3 minutes, you really don't have to have any other justification for asking somebody to sit down, except the presiding officer or any council member can declare them out of order for overstepping their time boundaries. So we already have the ability, if any council member wants to stop a speaker, they can do so. Excuse me, if they want to make a motion to stop a speaker, they can make that motion. And if it receives a majority vote of council, then the speaker stops. That is a soft 3-minute rule. The clerk keeps the time. If you're here from our meetings, you'll hear 3 minutes, 6 minutes, etc. I've been mayor now for 11 years, and I estimated that I have spent 240 minutes listening to people talk beyond 3 minutes. 2 hours total in 11 years. I also estimate I've spent over 4,000 hours on this job. But 2 hours listening to people speak over 3 minutes. Now I'm going to contrast with public hearings where we give people 15 minutes for the antis and 15 minutes for the fors, and then rebuttal and rebuttal of 5 minutes each. But you know, something I think most people who've attended these meetings have heard said here many times is you're going to have your say. You're not going to walk out of here with something on your mind that you feel you need to say. Unless you're out of order. We don't say out of order, but that's assumed, I think. What we normally do at 3 minutes is the clerk says 3 minutes. Generally, I'm watching the speaker, and this whole issue is about whether the mayor gets to do this or council gets to do this, okay? I'm watching the speaker, and generally I know at 3 minutes that person is within a minute of stopping. So I just kind of do like this, waiting. If a council member wants to interrupt me and say, I'd like to make a motion that we stop this, they can do so. If they want to make a motion, that I would like to make a motion that we continue to hear this man or woman, they can do that. But I'm just doing this, and sometimes I'll say, when I'm not certain, I'll say, are you wrapping this up? You know, the idea is everybody knows that time is a factor, and it's only polite for me as the presiding officer to keep that in mind. And I promise you, in 11 years of meetings, I've always kept that in mind. We call 6, 9, and 12, but those integers aren't mentioned in our policy. I don't know why we call that, but again, it's a matter of, it's saying to people, you know, these folks up here are going to listen to you. It's going to be friendly. Nobody's going to, in my opinion, harass you about standing there and talking. But, and so everybody's always thinking there's a time factor. Maybe 10 times in 11 years we've gone to 6 minutes. Now these are estimates, okay? Maybe 4 times we've gone to 9 minutes. Once we went to 12 that I remember. That was a gentleman standing here talking about the ice skating rink on the Union Square. Never had a problem. I've always felt council was okay with this. And certainly they've always had the right, and I've said this several times, and I'll probably say it again, they've had the right to interrupt the speaker. Okay, this doesn't give council any right. It does take away, in my opinion, takes kind of away from that friendly nature that if you're getting to the end, we're going to let you get there, but you're going to hear 6 minutes, okay? I think that is a good, soft 3. Once a citizen in 11 years was declared out of order, and that happened in the first 15 seconds. Okay? That had nothing to do with time. Again, I want the citizens to have a good experience, and I want to see if there are ways we can make it friendlier and better. Apparently, again, the idea is at 3 minutes, instead of sort of sensing where the speaker is and knowing that the council members have the ability to speak if they want to and make motions. Instead, I will say, sorry, your time is up, but I'm going to ask if council would like to give you more time. And then we take a vote on whether we give the person more time. I'm going to tell you, if I'm standing there and I say, I paid my taxes for 24 years on time, and I've only come here 1 time to complain about a curb and gutter issue, and you tell me you're going to have to stop after 3 minutes and take a vote on whether I can continue, I'm going to tell you right there, probably, that I'm outraged. Now, most people are not going to say I'm outraged. They're just going to be humble. That's my opinion on it. I don't see why it needs to be me. Why do I have to be the one to interrupt these people? If council wants to interrupt them, go ahead. Let's reword this thing so council can interrupt after 3 minutes. Why me? I don't want to interrupt anybody. I didn't see any need to commit any resources to this matter because it would seem what we had done, what had come out of the CEG experience. I believe that all council members knew where I stood on this, and although that has no importance, it does take on importance when a meeting like a committee like this is organized while you're out of town, and heaven forbid you're put on it. That ties in with the rest of my remarks, okay? Time and again, the most vocal rep of the CEG has emphatically stated he likes what we've done, but he doesn't like how we did it. Okay, ask yourself, is it important what we did or how we did it? I assume council also felt we had accomplished the desired objective. While on vacation, I learned that a committee had been formed and I had been appointed to it. My initial reaction was not to serve because I had a fear, an expectation, that the 3-minute rule was going to get into this. And I didn't feel the 3-minute rule needed to be brought into it. But again, I'm keeping this a secret so nobody knows there's this tiny little rift. Believe me, there are others that I'm not talking about. And every council and every group of our size has little rifts that you just don't take public, right? It's like family stuff. With that little rift over, do we make the mayor stop the person? Do we make him interrupt the speaker and call for a motion? And so that's where we are tonight. I felt that it was going to be brought up, by the way. That's why at the last meeting, I asked the council and Mr. Thom about the scope of this project before I was committed to serve. I was not going to serve on any committee that had to do with the 3-minute rule. I just wasn't going to do it. I can understand and accept council telling me how to run the meeting. That's fine. That's Robert's Rules of Order and all those other things that Mr. Thom talked about. But I wasn't going to vote on it. I wasn't going to vote to make myself interrupt the speaker. So I asked the question. Nobody said anything. I asked, does this only have to do with timing? And when I asked that question, I knew, I suspect some other people knew, I don't know that, but let's speak for themselves. I knew that I was asking, don't tell me this is about the 3-minute rule. Somebody else is going to have to do that. I'm not going to be involved. Mr. Thom said it's only about timing. I'm not going to challenge any council member because they didn't say anything. Mr. Thom said it's about timing. Again, I want every citizen to have a good experience and see if we can make it better and get maximum input from our citizens. At the meeting, my motion to continue allowing citizen input on specific items at the beginning of the council meetings and other comments at the end died for lack of a second. The subcommittee then pointed out a motion which had been placed in front of me and didn't differ appreciably, in my opinion, from my motion, except it included the 3-minute rule. Believing, and still believing that, the 3-minute rule was not subject to the subcommittee's charge by council, I declared the motion out of order. In my opinion, it remains out of order at this time. The subcommittee motion was a compound motion, two very separate and very totally different issues in one motion. If I voted yes, then I'm voting yes to fortifying, that's probably not the right word, fortifying the 3-minute rule, requiring myself to interrupt the speaker, whether I wanted to or not. If I vote no, I'm voting against citizen input. I'm stuck with that. An abstention counts as a yes. I still feel that my only way to avoid voting on an out-of-order motion or to cast a vote different from my beliefs was to withdraw from this committee. So this is only about the 3-minute rule. In my opinion, this would not be citizen-friendly, would use up more time than it saves. Frankly, I believe would look silly in many, many instances. You've got somebody sitting there and they're wrapping up their comments, they're within 15 seconds of finishing. You take a vote, and then they say, whoops, I lost my train of thought. These people are not trained speakers. They don't know how to hold their remarks to 3 minutes. They're probably very nervous coming up there and speaking to this group in front of you folks. So why do anything that possibly makes them more uncomfortable or gives them with just a little bit of a sour taste? Hey, I'm speaking my piece. Everybody here gets a chance. I believe every council member has the right to make a motion to declare a speaker out of order at any time for essentially any reason. At the appropriate time, I intend to make the following motions. A, that the 3-minute rule be declared outside the scope of the committee. B, to separate the two components of the compound motion, if we still have those two pieces of the motion. To clarify item 3, to state specifically that the mayor or any council member can ask to invoke the 3-minute rule. D, number 6, needs to be deleted. E, if it's still necessary, let's establish a subcommittee charged to consider the 3-minute rule, whether it's a hard 3 or a soft 3. Again, My intention is to enable every citizen to have a good experience when dealing with city council and staff, seek ways to make it better, and avoid matters that make it worse. To paraphrase my laborer dad, who later became a minister, I want every citizen to be able to say, I had my say, not always my way, but I believe I get the same answers from millionaires too. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Is there any council members who would like to make a statement?
I just want to clarify that motion that was approved, that the motion was to direct the attorney, the deputy city attorney, to bring before council changes to the ordinance which would relocate the public comment time to the section of item 3. Furthermore, it directed staff to provide a framework for discussion regarding policy, which may or may not include time limits. So we're not, that was the motion. Is that correct? Is that the way it was reported?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's the way it was.
All I understood is moving up in the, there's no discussion of, we still have the policies in effect for the 3-minute rule that were passed in 98, 2005. But as far as your motion is concerned, that's not going to be in there as we present to you.
Right. But what's coming back to us is an ordinance change.
I did one thing that I had in here that I left out. Mr. Crump, did you give advice, legal or personal, to any member of the subcommittee? Any legal or personal advice to a member of the subcommittee?
No, I did not.
Not at all?
No, let me put that. Ms. Fox called me and asked me questions about what our procedure was and what our ordinances said, and I told her exactly what they said, just like I would tell you or anybody else who calls and asks me a legal opinion about what's in our ordinances and what's our policies.
Just the way you expressed yourself a minute ago, it was very clear that you were expressing a strict bias, in my opinion, about the 3-minute rule.
Mayor, I totally disagree with you.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm just telling you my opinion.
I'll tell you my opinion as a lawyer is that I give advice to you and to council members, and I do the best I can. I don't put my personal opinion in anything. I applaud your continued efforts to allow people to speak as long as they want to and say whatever they want to, just as I applaud and laud council members' desire to do the same. I mean nothing in my tone of voice to infer.
Did your conversations with Mrs. Fox have anything to do with the 3-minute rule?
My comments to Ms. Fox were what the policy was existing, and that's a 1998
On the
policy.
3-minute rule?
So
I'm going to continue this question.
Okay.
So did you think that the 3-minute rule was going to be subject to this committee? After telling me it's only about timing?
It was my opinion that the 3-minute rule was part of the discussion.
Part of timing. That's part of timing.
Yes,
Is that right?
that was Ms. Doula's understanding too, and that was part of her presentation.
The timing was part of it? That the 3-minute rule was part of timing?
Yes.
Okay. My motion is just, no, I don't know that I have a motion. I just wanted to express my opinion about it. I told you what motions that I plan to make, if needed, at the appropriate time. And I appreciate very much everybody listening to me. Thank you.
I would like to see that policy brought back, but in effect, we do still have our current 3-minute, soft 3-minute.
The soft 3-minute.
We still have that soft 3-minute.
Oh, absolutely. We always will have that.
But this allows for the respect for everyone here in the audience to have for each other, also for council, and that what we can expect from people understanding our rules of speaking before us, which is a timing issue, which is what I think Mrs. Fox and I both were coming from as presentation of people speaking before us, and it's also including time.
Well, I do think that when I asked the question about the scope of this committee, and I was told it was just about timing, I believe that some people knew what I was asking about without revealing that little secret that we had a rift over that. And so I thought, okay, I'll serve on the committee. I'm not going to have to withdraw from this committee. I'm going to agree with everything. Give people more comment time. I would not have served had I known that the 3-minute rule was subject to that. And then I wouldn't have had to withdraw. Then I wouldn't have had to withdraw.
It's gonna be hard to get anybody to serve on a subcommittee if you're subjected to things like this.
The charge was established, Mrs.
Well,
Fox.
my intent was a noble intent. It has always been a noble intent to look after the citizens. And, personally, I resent what you've insinuated. I have a real problem with that. I think if anybody looks at my service, they will know that I was always noble. I called Mr. Crone. I also called Ms. Dula because they're the staff people that I am supposed to call if I have a question. And I certainly don't question why you call either one of them or what you say to them. That is your business.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, can we continue on with appointments of boards and commissions? The motion is passed and this discussion should be.
Do we have any appointments?
Never got a second.
Persons requesting to be heard. Okay, sorry. Sorry.
No.
Mr. Hood, I want to tell you personally, I'm sorry again about your dad.
Thank you all for your condolences and concerns about my father's passing. Very meaningful and appreciated from all of you that spoke to me about that. My name is Cliff Moone, as you've seen it, 2925 East Street Court Northeast. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Barry, Mr. Crone. I put my name to speak tonight simply because I was either going to thank you for the work that's been done. I'm going to do that. I'm going to thank you for your work you've just done. I'm sorry that those young men just left because they just saw democracy in action. They just saw a council debate and discuss. And I know there's some feelings here, and I understand that. I have a couple of quick things to say, and I'll try to do it within 3 minutes, too. I would like to say, first of all, that I think, and some of this won't be in order, not in order, but it won't be in order of logic, is that the simplest way for a person standing here at the moment, following rules of decorum and Robert's rules, would be when you say 3 minutes, I say, may I continue? Without objection, I would like to continue. That's under Robert's rules. I can ask without objection. And the reason it falls to you, Mr. Mayor, quite frankly, while every other council member can speak as they wish to speak and make a motion as they wish to make a motion, it falls to you because you are the chair of this council. That's the reason. That's the only reason. You asked that question, so I thought I'd answer it within the realm of Robert's rules. So that being said, I think that would be a simple way in the rules of decorum that I request the permission. I'm requesting to speak when I stand here. And you have the authority to give that or take it or not, as you see fit, because you are our elected officials. And I want you to have that authority. I want you to have the authority to cut people off at 3 minutes if you need to. Because we don't know what somebody's going to stand up here and say or do. And we have to have order and good conduct. And that's how we stay friendly and work well. That's one of the reasons Robert's Rules was created, quite frankly. So I say that, and then I'm going to reserve the rest of my remarks for after you actually vote on this change. I want to commend you as a committee working to move forward to place this. The last thing I want to say is, Mr. Mayor, I'm not positive you were referring to me. Perhaps you were, perhaps you weren't. But it seems that you were. I have never stood up here and spoken on this issue. I want you to know, I want it to be a public record, as a member of the Citizens for Equity in Government. Not because I wouldn't, but that's not why I stood here. I stood here as a citizen to speak to a concern that I had about the order in which the October 2nd motion was being carried out, so that it could be done in good order, and that we can have, and I've said this before, which I know all of you want, government well-crafted, as well as life, as well as business, and all of those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. Now, we did find in this exercise that the mayor is allowed to talk back and forth with citizens. I did not know that, but I'm not going to talk back and forth. I would like to make 2 points. First of all, I apologize. I want to make sure the minutes do not show any reference to Mr. Moon as a representative of CUG, because that's certainly out of line. And second, Mr. Moon, you are exactly right. You do. No.
Oh, okay.
Well, either way.
All right.
But you are exactly right. It is very good for you to be able to say, is it okay if I keep speaking? But typically at 3 minutes with the average citizen, what I get is a deer in the headlights look. Like, what are you calling 3 minutes for? Okay? They've gotten up there. They may not even know about the 3 minutes being called out. But when they get up there, they're engrossed in what they're doing. And when you call 3 minutes, it's actually startling to most people. And that's why I think it's comforting to just, and then we know at any time after 3 minutes, we can declare them out of order. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thanks for your comments.
My name is James Thomas Shell, 2442 23rd Street Drive Northeast, and I also represent the property at 443 2nd Avenue Southwest. Okay, and I was at the meeting yesterday, and I think it was pretty cut and dry what went on yesterday, and there was no ambiguity about the conversation or anything. As many of you know, I speak to people throughout this community. And one of the problems that we face, according to some of the leading developers, and this cuts across the whole spectrum of this community, is that we create these committees and then we never follow through on their recommendations. Did it with swimming pools. We've done it several times. I've spoken to people about where the end justifies the means, it seems. And it seems to me that we need to keep this type of amateur politics from affecting the processes that affect this community. We see people getting run over all the time. I don't see, I haven't always seen friendliness. You spoke about friendliness. This council empowered this subcommittee to bring back a recommendation, and then I see these ladies over here, and they don't look very comfortable right now. Okay, and I understand that's part of the democratic process and everything, but they thought they had accomplished something yesterday, and then you're coming back with a petty political process that is keeping this from moving forward in the manner that it was expected to go forward, because I've been at every one of these meetings, and Mr. Lell, Alderman Lell, was the one who helped to institute that committee, because basically you did not want that to go on the agenda. That's what this whole thing is about. It's not about a 3-minute time limit or anything else. You want it to be a motion process. And so there's so much ambiguity involved in that. We've had my friend here, Cliff Moone, have to get up here, I believe 3 or 4 times over the last several months to have this back and forth. And I do represent the Citizens for Equity in Government, and all we want to do, is to make it easier for citizens to be heard, and not in words, but in actions. I don't think that many people are feeling all of one mind right now. And this doesn't seem very friendly. It makes me nervous to watch it. And it has been a little bit embarrassing, to be frank with you. And my friend Joe Brandon, he read over, mess continue. Thank you very much. Thank you. I felt like that earlier. But my friend Joe Brannick read over the codes and ordinances, and by a majority of the council, you know, they can also, when you get out of control like that, you know, they can make a motion and they can have you removed. And that's all I have to say at this moment in time. Thank you for allowing me to address the council. Thank you.
Well, the only thing I'm going to say is I have not been out of control. That's all I have to say.
Make a motion.
Make a motion to go to closed session.
Closed session.
Incidentally, excuse me, on a very positive note, I am pleased to present on behalf of the City Council from the North Carolina City and County Management Association, thanks to Nick Berry for your service as Executive Board Director, 2010 through 12. Let's hear it.
See, 3 minutes.
I'd rather go to closed session. I think we voted to go to closed session. Now, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. Let's go to closed session.